Let's talk about tariffs. They sound simple enough, right? Tax imported goods, bring back jobs, strengthen the economy. It's an idea that President Trump championed, and he wanted more American-made products and less reliance on foreign countries, and in turn, more jobs for US workers. And on paper, it almost sounds like a no-brainer. But what if I told you this plan could actually hurt the very people it aims to protect? What if instead of solving our problems, tariffs end up creating new ones, like higher prices, fewer jobs, and a slower economy? It's a wild ride, and if you stick with me, I'll show you why this seemingly simple solution could have some serious unintended consequences. First, let's break down Trump's pitch. He said, we're too dependent on other countries. We need to make things here in America. More jobs, stronger economy. And honestly, that sounds a little patriotic too, all right? Who wouldn't want more jobs here at home? Let's look a little closer. Why are we dependent on other countries in the first place? It's not just because we want cheap stuff, although let's be real, we all love a good deal. It's because other countries, places like China, Vietnam, and Mexico have systems built in to produce goods efficiently and cheaply. They've got the infrastructure, the supply chain, and yes, the lower wages to keep costs down. So even if we tried to bring all of those jobs back, or even some of those jobs back, we'd likely hit a wall. Why? Because we don't have the same setup here. And here's the kicker. Many Americans aren't willing to take those jobs for the wages companies could afford to pay while staying competitive. It's a logistical and economic mismatch. But then there's the big question. Aren't we too dependent on other countries? Isn't this all risky? And it's a fair concern. You might think, what if we can't get what we need because another country decides to cut us off? Here's where it gets interesting. Yes, we depend on other countries for goods, but we're not putting all of our eggs in one basket. In fact, we import from a huge ecosystem of nations. It's like diversifying your investments. If one country's supply chain breaks down, we have backups. Check this out. Here's a chart showing all the major countries we rely on for imports. You'll see that it's not just China or Mexico, it's a web of partnerships that help us get everything from cars to clothes to electronics. This system works because it spreads out the risk. If something goes wrong in one country, we can pivot to another. And it's this global network that keeps our shelves stocked and prices relatively low. Now, here is where tariffs throw a wrench in the system. When you slap a tax on imports, the cost of goods rises. And who pays for that? You do. We go to the store and suddenly toilet paper is 30% more expensive. And we think, okay, fine, I'll cut back on a couple bananas this week, right? But this isn't just about your grocery bill. Try multiplying that by millions of people. And when we all start spending a little bit less on other things, businesses feel the hit. Your local grocery store starts to lose money. Maybe they close down. The suppliers who sold to that store, they lose a customer. They lay off workers. And it doesn't stop there. Investors see the losses, they panic and pull their money. They move it to maybe safer bets like energy or banking. But even that's temporary, because if the whole economy slows down, energy companies feel the pain, and this is what economists call a feedback loop. It starts small with a price hike here, a business closure there, but eventually it ripples through the entire economy. And once that loop starts, it's really hard to stop it. Now, let's zoom out and look at what happened during Trump's trade war with China. Between 2018 and 2020, the US imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars of Chinese goods, with the goal being to protect American jobs and reduce the trade deficit. Here's what actually went down. First, US businesses paid an extra $57 billion in tariffs. Farmers, especially soybean producers, were crushed as China retaliated by cutting imports from the US. And third, the government ended up spending $28 billion in subsidies to bail out those farmers. So let that sink in. The tariffs were supposed to help American workers and businesses, but instead they hurt key industries like farming and manufacturing. And the cherry on top, the manufacturing jobs that we were supposed to get didn't flood back to the US. Companies just shifted production to other low-cost countries like Vietnam or automated more jobs. So the very policy meant to protect Americans just ended up making things worse for them and their livelihoods. But what if it doesn't stop at tariffs? What if other countries retaliate? This is where we enter dangerous territory, a full-blown trade war. Back in the 1930s, the US passed the Sarbanes-Hawley tariff. And this act was to protect American farmers. Other countries retaliated, global trade tanked by 66%, and the world plunged deeper into the Great Depression. Now imagine that happening in today's interconnected economy. Countries could start taxing our imports, cutting off markets for American goods. Inflation would spike, businesses would collapse, and we could find ourselves in a modern day depression. Dangerous game, and the stakes are very, very high. And here is the most ironic part. The industries that tariffs are designed to protect, like steel and manufacturing, often end up getting hit the hardest. Take steel, for example. When tariffs raised the cost of foreign steel, US companies had to pay more. Automakers who rely heavily on steel saw their costs go up pretty drastically. And some tried to pass those costs onto consumers. Others decide to move production overseas to cut costs. Either way, American jobs were lost. And it's not just steel. Farming and tech, two of the most critical sectors for US growth, also felt the squeeze. So retaliation tariffs hit their exports, reducing demand and leading to even more layoffs. So the very policy designed to save jobs, it destroys them. Let's bring this all together. Tariffs are sold as a way to protect American workers, rebuild industries, and make the US more self-sufficient. But when you peel back the layers, they often do the opposite, raising prices, cutting jobs, and slowing economic growth. So I'm gonna leave you with this question. Are tariffs a necessary evil to protect American interests? Or are they maybe a ticking time bomb that could send our economy spiraling? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching.